Hello everybody, welcome back to the dark side of life. Today is going to be our very first topic video, and this is going to be a bit of a doozy. This is not meant for children. This is meant for pretty much adults and teens. This is something that if you're a teenager going through this, or if you're an adult going through this, something I want to talk about. The topic today is suicide. Now, one thing I really hate is that apparently nowadays the solution to suicide is to not talk about it, instead to bury our heads in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. The problem with suicide is that this is the reason it gets attempted in the first place, is because people feel ignored. And when you make the word a taboo word to say, so people feel more ignored. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, why do people commit suicide? Why do people attempt suicide? What is the cause of it? Now, well, to be honest, there's not going to be one full cause of it. There are three different forms of people who attempt suicide. Those are the fakers, the ones who don't really mean it but might go too far, and then of course the ones who mean it. Let's first talk about the fakers. This is probably one of the worst things you could probably do, is fake suicide. And what I mean by that is, you do something that you know will not kill you, or has a very low chance to kill you, but you do it because you want people to think of your intent. A good example of this is people that decide that they're going to overdose on something like ibuprofen or Tylenol. The reason that this is an issue is that while I'm sure a certain amount of ibuprofen or Tylenol will eventually affect you, the chances of it affecting you are not as great as people think. It's going to take a lot more of those medications to do the job. And a lot of the time when I talk to people who try to talk about how they attempted suicide, they talk about how they overdosed and they changed their mind and walked to a hospital. So I'm going to go over how overdosing actually feels, because I think that's something that, people don't want to experience, but they might wonder, how does that feel? Like, what's the cause of that? So I'm going to go over that in this video. People who this is probably, for me, some of the most despicable people, because they take a problem that some people really have and they use it to benefit off of it. And what happens is, when you use a serious problem to benefit yourself, you destroy the importance of that system, and it really makes those who seriously suffer from it get ignored more often. If you're somebody who thinks you're going to use this as a form of attention, just stop. Find another form of attention. Because every time you decide to pretend or fake it, you are actually taking the attention off of somebody who has the real intent to do it. Now let's talk about the second group, those who attempt but aren't fully committed to it. These would be people who slit their wrists, but slit their wrists in the incorrect fashion. Now, I'm not going to say the correct or incorrect fashion, because if you're somebody who's thinking about that, the last thing I want to do is tell you how to do it. I would tell you, don't do it. But people who decide that they're going to do something such as that, or use a means of suicide that could be successful, but chances very low because they're not fully committed to it. This is people that might try to strangle themselves with something that isn't very durable. Or again, like I said, cut themselves the wrong way across the wrist. What I mean by the fact that they're not very committed is that they're not doing what most people who are fully committed to doing will do. And that is find out how to do it. Now, personally for me, I could never do that. Like, I'm not one for pain. So the idea of that was just, for me personally, if I was going to go, I didn't want to go out in a painful way. I never understood that. I will be honest, I never understood that form, simply because why would you want to commit so much pain on yourself? The problem with this group is that because they're not fully committed to it, they tend to jump on that decision way too quickly. Luckily, they can survive, but then they get attention and it becomes more of a reason to want to do it again. This is something that also, I'm going to go more deep later in this video. The third set are those who are fully committed, and these are those who usually succeed. If they don't succeed, they don't succeed because the dice rolled very luckily in their favor, and they survive somehow. Now, in my last video about myself, I talked about my suicide attempt, where the first time I overdosed, and the second time I OD'd even worse, and the second time my heart stopped. I went into a 4-day coma, and I had amnesic symptoms for about 4 days. Now, I don't remember any of this. 9 days of my life are gone from this, and I still to this day suffer from memory problems because of it. Because even though I didn't go brain dead, or cause myself serious brain damage, I did damage my brain when my heart stopped and I stopped breathing. The fact is, you can only stop breathing for a very short period of time before your brain starts to be affected. And I'm more than certain my breathing stopped long enough to affect parts of my brain in a way to where I can't remember well. Now, it's very important to understand, number one, what are the signs of somebody truly going to commit suicide? The biggest thing, and this is honestly the biggest red flag that people miss a lot because it's very confusing, that is that when somebody, and this is only going to really count for the third group, when somebody has truly decided that they're going to do it, they're going to end their life, the last thing they want is for somebody to stop them. So they will find a way to do it so that nobody knows. And part of this process is usually going to be showing a unnatural form of okayness. They're not going to be super happy and, yay. They're going to come off as so they're fine. And you're going to, honestly, when you look at them, you're going to think that they're getting better. Like, wow, they're finally getting out of that depressive state. This is so great. They're finally moving on. But the problem is that usually when they have that sign where they're finally just, hey, I love y'all. Nah, I'm good, man. I feel good. They're saying that because they've actually finally made the decision. Believe it or not, it's not an easy decision to make. Nobody who does it full-heartedly does it just because they thought about it. The decision to act on ending one's life, ending your life, usually is built up over days, weeks, months, until everything just becomes too much. It's not something that people just say, oh my goodness, I just had a bad day, I'm going to do it. It's building up. And something to be aware of is that something building that long does not instantly fix itself overnight. And a lot of people just kind of, brush depression as being sad, not knowing what depression is. Depression is feeling empty, feeling alone. You feel like there's nothing for you anymore. There's no point. It's just the same thing, and nothing matters. Nobody truly shows you any form of empathy or caring. Nobody understands how you feel. People might fake it, but realistically, nobody is truly sincere in their intents. And after a while of this, usually, again, days, weeks, months, you just get to the point. Depending on what leads up to that, a very traumatic event can make it come faster. But then you decide, and again, you don't want anyone to know, so normally you show no signs of it. I can tell you, my first 2 attempts where I was serious about it, I showed no signs of what I was going to do or what I had already done. I showed like I was okay. You know what? It can't be helped. It is what it is. Let's move on with life. But the fact was, I had already decided at that point in time what I was going to do. And I did it. The question now is, how do you stop it? And the way you stop it, if you are dealing with somebody who you worry who has serious depression, you're worrying about that, you need to get them to talk. This is the biggest thing that people who are suicidal or contemplating suicide, which I guess would be suicidal, they need somebody to show them and push them more and more and more to talk about their feelings. Usually those who are going to who are suicidal, have a swirl of emotions inside them and they just can't handle them anymore. And the problem is that they're holding them in, and eventually when you hold in your emotions, they swallow you whole. Emotions are one thing that you should not hold in your body. You need to release them by talking to somebody. And when I mean release them, I mean talking about them, getting them out. This is the best way to remove all the pressure that builds up under you. We're like pots of boiling water, and the more emotions we have swirling inside us, the hotter the water is. If we don't take that lid off, we're going to boil over. And if you are seeing somebody who is suffering from depression and you think, I just need to give them space, honestly, that's the wrong thing to give them. You should be watching them at all times. You should be making sure they know they're cared about. You should be making sure that they know how important they are. I will be honest, all suicide is selfish. No act of suicide is not unselfish. And one of the best ways to prevent it is to let them know it's selfish. If you see somebody who's struggling, you need to let them know, look, if you do anything, you've got to realize just how much it's going to hurt everyone around you. We care about you. Don't be selfish. Think about everybody. And again, you need to keep a close eye, and probably for years. This is not something that goes away instantly, especially since it's been building up. And the minute they show that they're okay with life, you should be watching them even closer. You should be checking everything. If you know that somebody in your family is suicidal, you need to make sure that all medications are well locked up from that person. If someone is suffering from depression, you need to be removing as many obstacles as many items they can use to end their life as possible. This means if you have a weapon at home, lock it up, remove the bullets, keep them separate, make sure it's inaccessible by this person. Same with medication, lock it up, make sure that they can't access it by themselves. As for knives, again, just put them up, put them somewhere, lock them up. Do not let the person around a knife. You need to actively remove any way they can hurt themselves. And most importantly, you can't baby this person. You have to be direct with them. You have to tell them, look, this is pretty selfish of you. Think of everyone else around you. We all care about you, and you're making these decisions and not thinking about how it's going to affect the rest of us. If you baby these actions, what can end up happening is the person instead can start becoming addicted to that feeling of getting that attention. You don't want to put positive attention with the idea of suicide. You want to keep it negative attention, but you want to make it that negative attention where they know you care about them, where it's like, don't do this to us. This is not funny. It's not okay. We are here for you. Talk to us. Use us. This is something that if I had done in my life, I would have been better. But when I was going through my phases, I didn't have it. I didn't feel I could talk to anyone about my feelings and my emotions. I mean, I had some pretty fucked up emotions. I had some really fucked up thoughts and feelings, and even nowadays I still get some pretty fucked up thoughts and feelings and dreams. And honestly, I just learned nowadays that if that shit's out of my control, all I can control is, do I dwell on it? Do I think about it? Do I fantasize about it? Or do I move on with my life and realize there's a part of my brain that just doesn't click right? And I just have to try my best to remember, if I focus on that and I think about it, I'm more likely to act on it. Now, let's flip this over. Let's say you are right now, the viewer, if you are feeling or you are contemplating suicide, please remember a couple of things. Number one, this decision is final. If you succeed, there's no takebacks. This is not a decision that you should take lightly, because if you succeed at it, you have removed every single possibility in your life that could exist. You've also hurt every single person who cared about you and loved you. And honestly, it's extremely selfish. You need to think about what you need in your life to be successful, and you need to look forward. And yeah, maybe you feel like nobody cares about you, and you know what? That could be pretty true. But the fact is, even if you feel nobody cares about you now, and even if that's true, in the future, somebody will. In the future, you have a chance to have what you are yearning for, which is someone to care about you regardless. I know that feeling. I suffered of it many times, just feeling like nobody would ever care about me, nobody wanted me. And the fact was, that was what led to my attempts. You're probably not going to get lucky like me. You got to remember that my heart stopped, my breathing stopped. I went into a 2-day coma. I had amnesia for, 4-day coma. I had amnesia for 4 days. The fact was, the doctor said I should not have survived. They don't know how I survived. I should be dead. Today, I should be dead in front of I should not be here right now making this video. But you might not get that lucky. I got lucky. I got a chance to take a look at my life and realize that, honestly, the people that really pushed me to that part in my life weren't worth the energy. And that's one thing as well. You've got to realize that if you're at that stage in your life, there is somebody pushing you towards that stage. And if you, this is what everyone's got to realize. Somebody who's suicidal, there's somebody pushing them. And if you are suicidal, remember, they're not worth that energy. For me, life is a game. I'm not going to lose that game. I'm not going to let somebody dictate my life. My second attempt, I almost lost that game and gave somebody who ruined my life at that point, almost gave them the victory. Almost. But I got lucky, and because I turned my life around from that phase, they took the big L. And they have to know that now. They know now that their attempts to ruin my life failed miserably. I survived. Not only did I survive, but I went on to college and I became successful. And they're still sitting in their house drinking and being white trash, talking about how bad of a person I was. And damn. Of course, it's all lies. But the thing is that I won that game. I did it. I beat them. And that's how I move on from day to day, is remembering that I beat everybody. I won the game. And the last thing I'm going to do is give that game up. And for me, my life is a game. I'm going to raise my family. I'm going to have my kids. I'm going to keep them happy. I'm going to make sure that they know they can always talk to me. If you are thinking about these things, again, get professional medical help if possible. If it isn't possible, talk to somebody. Somebody close to you. I am thinking of starting a Reddit for this so that people have a place to talk anonymously. And remember, some people will never understand. Some people will judge you. Some people will bully you. We all go through that. But it's not about those people. It's about the people who care about you. It's about the people who love you. And there will always be somebody, somewhere, who does or will love you when they meet you. Nobody is completely worthless. Nobody's life is meaningless. And you have to keep fighting. Now, the last part of this video, I want to talk about how does it feel to overdose. Now, I want to talk about this reason because overdosing, I find, is one of the most common ways people fake suicide. So I'm going to talk about my experience overdosing. Now, again, it might not always be like this, but very possible it is. I would assume if you overdose properly, it's going to be like this. My first overdose, within 30 minutes to an hour, I was sleepy and I fell asleep. And I slept deep. Very deep. I've never slept that deep in my life. That's the deepest I've slept in my entire life. Up until the second attempt. The second time, it took me only about 15 minutes and I was out. When you overdose, what usually happens if you overdose very strongly is you're going to get tired and sleep very quickly. And the other downside is that when you finally wake up, especially if you've been out for 9 days, you can't move. My legs did not work when I regained consciousness the second time. I actually could not walk. It's crazy. But my muscles had not been used for 9 days. 9 days not using your muscles is actually very damaging on your body, believe it or not. The third time, it's very important. The third time I overdosed, it wasn't as strong, but I will tell you one thing. within 10-15 minutes, my body was shutting down. In fact, I couldn't even, I had to pee, and I couldn't even stand properly. I fell in the toilet. Like, I couldn't properly stand, and within 15 minutes, I could not raise my hand over my head to unlock the door. They ended up having firefighters come over, open the door, break the door open, and get me out and get me to the hospital. The reason I'm talking about this is because anybody who says that they overdosed and then walked to a hospital, I'm more than willing is full of shit. If someone ever tells you that they overdosed and then they walk to the hospital, they are automatically, I can tell you right now, they are not being honest. You cannot overdose and then walk long distance to the hospital. You can overdose and call somebody, but you can't walk that long, that far. Your body starts to shut down. Your muscles shut down. Your brain shut down. After your muscles shut down, you start to become tired. And the third time when that was happening, I knew it was going to happen. I just gave up. I closed my eyes and let it take me. To this day, I don't know how I'm alive. That was the third attempt. That was after my big one. My body was still weak, but somehow my body just didn't give up. I still think of suicide. It still comes in my head. But the difference now is I don't dwell on it. And I have a purpose in my life to not do it. One thing that is also very important, and I see this in a lot of suicide movies and stuff where they try to educate about suicide. I'm going to talk about one of these in another video. If somebody ever attempts suicide and writes a letter blaming all those around them, I can tell you right now, that wasn't a full attempt. They might have been successful, but the reality is, when somebody commits suicide fully heartedly, they've decided to actually do it to end their own life, they don't blame those around them. They blame themselves. They might blame a specific person or two who directly caused this problem, but they're not going to blame everybody. They're not going to blame those just because they didn't reach out to them the way they wanted to. If you ever find that kind of note and the person did not succeed, I can almost guarantee you that they were more just wanting a way to punish those around them, and that was the essence. At which point, you need to firmly reaffirm that that's not gonna fly. Now, there might be many questions about this. Again, this video is not meant for kids. If you are having any thoughts about harming yourself or hurting somebody else, please seek professional medical attention. Or if that is not possible, please talk to somebody that you can talk to. I will continue to post more videos about different aspects of mental illness. A lot of these will probably be focused around suicide, but I'll be getting into some other ones as well, some probably more disturbed thoughts that people have. The reason being that I think it's important that people realize others have those thoughts as well. Some of the hardest parts about having disturbed thoughts is not knowing that others share them with you and thinking that you're the only one that has them. I will also be doing a video on serial killers, mostly because I want to go on how this process begins. So if you are a person who is at risk of that, you can make the decisions to properly avoid it and find a happy life. With that said, thank you for watching this video. Any questions about the topic today, please leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. I will see you guys in the next video.